Southern California, welcome to Money Matters with Dino. Saturdays from noon to 1, right here on Power Players Radio, KTLK AM1150. Do you own a home or have plans to in the future? You'll get all the information you need to know about what's happening in the local real estate market and how to take advantage of that knowledge. How to approach home ownership or mortgage financing with design, vision, and focus, as well as accurate information. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, listen to Money Matters with Dino right here on Power Players Radio, KTLK AM1150.
Welcome back to Money Matters with Dino. If you have any questions for myself or my guests, or if you need help with your money matters, give us a call at 949-720-1616. That's 949-720-1616, or check us out online at moneymatterswithdino.com. From your estate to real estate, we're here to help. This segment is brought to you by CFAM Credit Solutions. And guys, I'm in the mortgage business, so I deal with people's credit all the time. And I got to tell you, if you have any little dings on your credit, such as that $39 collection account from Time Warner or some place that you didn't even know of that is dragging your score down by 40, 50 points, or you had a late payment that really wasn't late, give these guys a call because they can help you. And I got to tell you, your credit score does matter. It will save you thousands of dollars on pretty much anything you want to do.
Did you pull my credit history? Because that was sounding eerily correct. I'm just checking.
So,
No?
Phil, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to moneymatterswithdino.com, check out CFAM Credit Solutions, click on the button,
just might,
and
yes.
get your, going?
Yep.
Or you can give me a call, and I'll just help you out through the process and kind of let you know what you can expect. My phone number is 949-720-1616. Joining us today in our discussion panel with the experts is real estate and business litigation Reed Aljian and real estate agent Jackie O. I love her name, by the way. Jackie O from TNG Real Estate Consultants. Today we're going to be talking about the real estate litigation nightmares and how to avoid them. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. Hey, Reed, let's start with you. Let's just tell me a little bit about what you do in your practice.
Sure. I've been a real estate and employment and general business litigation lawyer for about 15 years now. Started off in Jones Day, one of the biggest law firms in the world. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, started my own firm down here, Daily Aljian. We're right around the corner, actually. And primarily, the cases that we handle are for businesses, but we also handle plaintiff side or individuals who've had struggles or difficulties. In fact, recently we had a case where we represented someone dealing with their credit reporting and trying to fix an inaccurate report. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
I have a severe frustration with credit all the time because I'm constantly dealing with people's credit. And I used to jump in my earlier days and try and help people fix it and go through this nightmare of a situation. I had to stop. I was getting so aggravated and it was taking up so much of my day that now I just refer them out to people. But do you find that a lot as far as credit reports go? Are they erroneous a lot of times?
It's not that they're erroneous a lot of times, I think, but the bigger problem is when they are in error and it happens, how do you fix it? It's a long process.
To talk to.
It's difficult to get through to the right people, and when you do get through, it's very difficult to convince them that they're wrong. There's a lot of procedures. There's an issue of whether you should be dealing with federal law or state law. So it takes a lot of time, and if you actually have a valid claim, you have to really battle to get your credit report fixed, and that's a problem because, as you said, your credit matters.
Yeah.
I find with the credit issues, you're guilty until proven innocent, and which is totally against our system.
Yeah. So Jackie O, tell us all a little bit about you and how you got the name Jackie O.
Well, my last name is Orzechowski, which most people can't say. So Jackie O is a little quicker and easier and catchier. I've been called Jackie O actually my whole life. So I didn't invent that, but I did invent the first lady of real estate. So I did come up with that. So
So Jackie O, the first lady of real estate. And what area do you primarily work?
Well, I say that I'm licensed in California and I have a Prius and I'm not afraid to use it. So, but I do live in North Orange County and I sell a lot in North Orange County. And we have horse properties. We have larger acres and not as many HOAs as South County. So I do sell a little bit more in North Orange County. I also specialize in Palm Springs and Joshua Tree.
That's awesome. And I guess with Palm Springs, there's so many people from, Southern Orange County or Southern California, I should say, that have rental property or vacation homes up there.
We are getting a lot of people. In fact, I've noticed a lot of industry people from LA who are sick of the city and just want to get away. They're 5-acre parcels in Joshua Tree. And I find a lot of industry people coming and buying property for retirement.
So before we get started with all the questions, you were wanting to comment on the topic that we were talking about earlier with the bail bonds.
Well, I think what it comes down to is I heard a couple things that preventing lawsuits and where the buyer's agent, i.e. the mother-in-law in this case, I would have recommended like talking to the tenants, getting contracts, getting actual contracts in writing of what people were paying. And then as the listing agent disclosing like the rent control, that should have been in the disclosures. I would have put that in big, bold, capital letters. So
in this case, being that they don't want to sue their mother-in-law, they can still go after the listing agent if it wasn't properly disclosed.
Correct. And that's unfortunate. In real estate, they say that when you get sued, everyone gets sued.
And so there you go. So Reed, our litigation attorney that's here, he'd be the perfect person to go talk to and have him review the contracts and see if there's an actual case and see if there's a way to let your mother-in-law off the hook.
And keep peace in the family.
All right, guys, so let's just jump right into all the questions. I'm curious to see how you guys feel about these. So, okay, first, what's the biggest mistake people are making that will cause legal issues in their residential real estate transactions?
Well, if you're asking me, I would think disclosures are the biggest problem. I think Jackie and I were actually talking about this earlier, and is that what you feel too?
Yeah, well, two things. Definitely, I feel the number one mistake agents make is dual agency. And dual agency is where we call it in the industry double ending. And I think agents get so caught up on making that double commission that they forget who they're representing. And you are representing both. And how can you fight for them? And so, in my opinion, I'm not a big double ender. I don't do dual agency a lot. And I think that's how I've stayed out of legal issues. I've never even been threatened of a legal issue in 850 transactions. So, and I think that's a big part of it is I welcome other realtors to sell my listings.
Now, I just want to jump in here because I didn't even realize when she says dual agency, she means in the same transaction. I didn't know this was legal, that you can represent a buyer and seller in the same transaction.
And it's something that every real estate agent, almost every agent strives for because they make double the commission.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And Reed can actually, I don't know because again, I've never had a legal issue, but is that a common problem where you see a lot of lawsuits because of dual agency?
It is a big problem. You make a great point. And in the legal world, they call it fiduciary duties. It's a breach of fiduciary duty. You have an obligation as a real estate agent to make sure you get the best deal for your client. Mm-hmm. Now, if you represent both sides, how can you get the best deal for both sides? Because it's a conflict of interest.
I agree. I hate it, actually, because I am a fighter for my clients. And I always feel, you're kind of like become a mediator when you are doing dual agency. And that's not in my spirit. But I do it once in a while. I'm not going to say I never do it. I usually do it when it's in the seller or the buyer's best interest, when it's a hard to sell property.
Guys, if you're listening right now, you're listening to Money Matters with Dino, and we can be reached at 949-720-1616. That's 949-720-1616, or at moneymatterswithdino.com. You're going to be hearing a lot of great questions here today that our professionals are going to be answering. So please stay listening because you're going to learn a lot from this show. All right, guys, here's the next question. At what point does someone, whether it be a buyer or seller, need an attorney in a real estate transaction? Or do they?
It's kind of like asking, can you have a baby in the back of a car? It's safer to have it at the hospital, but yeah, you don't need a lawyer to do a transaction in real estate. Agents are in many times far more sophisticated in that area, but it also depends, I think, on the complexity of the deal, or maybe the amounts involved, something along those lines. But I think a qualified real estate agent can handle it all the way up until there's a clear problem that exists. And usually an agent can identify that problem when it does exist. For example, a threat is made, or someone walks away from their obligation to perform, or something along those lines.
Yep. Speaking of obligation to perform, we're going to touch a lot about the contingency period, and it's the standard contract, I believe, shows a 17-day removal of contingencies.
Correct.
What if the 17 days go up and the person doesn't want to sign the removal? What happens then?
Well, actually, then it's up to the listing agent to give what's called a notice to perform. And then usually it's in the contract of how many days they have, but usually it's 48 hours. And then if they don't return either one, then the seller can cancel at that point. But if that happens, now there was a 20-day window here, and the buyer who had the earnest money deposit up still runs no risk of losing that at that point, correct? It is very hard to keep the buyer's deposit, and Reed can maybe get more into this, until the buyer signs the removal of contingency form.
And actually, there's a case that came down a couple of years ago that even after all contingencies have been released, you still have a very difficult time of getting your hands on that deposit. It usually goes back. It's no longer, quote unquote, non-refundable for the most part.
And from what I understand, California is a very consumer-friendly state, and they tend to side on the consumer side, which is, in a way, I think a good thing, because think about it, our real estate's expensive. It's $500,000 usually or more, and it's a big investment. So some consumers are protected, really.
So let me ask you this question. Let's just say you sign, something goes wrong, or you change your mind, you don't want the house anymore, and you are in no way going to let go of that 15 or 20 grand that you've got down as a deposit. Will that house get tied up in litigation and cannot be sold during that period of time, or can it go back on the market while you're arguing over the money?
Well, so you're asking basically if everything has to stay, quote unquote, pending the outcome. I think it all depends on the situation. But generally speaking, you can't force someone to proceed with a contract. You can't force someone to buy your house. There is something called specific performance, which would be forcing someone to sell a house. But those are also unique situations as well.
Okay, but so I want to try and clarify that a little bit, because I'm real curious on that. So you get into contract, you put, let's just say $10,000 down. 17 days go by, you actually sign the removal of contingencies. The loan is going through. Everything appears to be fine. 30 days later, you're supposed to close, and there's a snag with the loan, and you can't fund. What happens? You've already signed off on everything, but you're like, I'm not losing my money, and I'll do whatever I have to protect it. And in that situation, isn't it true that the other person can't put their house back on the market? I thought you couldn't put the house back on the market.
That's not true. And actually, they could open another escrow
with just another company.
With another company.
And then how long would an argument like that take in court to resolve?
Legal issues take forever.
Forever.
And once you go to court, unless you settle or resolve early by dismissal, demur, something along those lines, you're looking at a year of litigation. But there are also earlier resolutions, such as preliminary injunctions and things along those lines. But my practice is, it's the unusual situation that you actually get to a lawsuit to stop the sale or to preserve the property because you believe it's so unique that you have to preserve it. It is extremely unique.
Well, again, in going into prevention of lawsuits, again, as a listing agent, I usually take a bigger down payment or a bigger deposit. So if something like this does arise, then I usually negotiate giving the buyer back half of their deposit and just canceling right there. And that's always worked for me.
That's great advice, actually. I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking to myself, and sorry, Reed, but the only people that ever really win are the attorneys.
That's right. You know, Dino, one thing to keep in mind is goals. Your goal at all. You should always consider, is my goal to make money and to, you know, enjoy the house or to sell the house, whatever it is. And at the same time, you got to think of what the costs of litigation are. They are extremely costly: time, resources, money. So you're exactly right.
And to keep a buyer's deposit, they have to show that it hurt them. What's the word? Legal word?
Damaged.
And in this market, where it's a rising market, the seller would be in their best interest to give their deposit back and put it back on the market. So
you're listening to Money Matters with Dino. If you have any questions about anything you've heard here today, you want to talk to one of our guests directly, give us a call. We're at 949-720-1616. That's 949-720-1616, or you can check us out online at moneymatterswithdino.com. From your estate to real estate, we're here to help you. Stick with us. We'll be right back after the break and continue our panel discussion with the experts. We're going to be giving you a few more secrets to navigate real estate litigation. Think about how you can use this information to protect your investments. And as always, don't just get real estate rich, get rich. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Finally, a reputable legal firm. CDA Law Center, a nationally recognized nonprofit homeowner advocate, one of the most trusted firms in the country for helping consumers with their loan modification process. CDA's attorneys have decades of combined experience guiding their clients through the very complex and choppy waters of loan modification. Call 877-499-4435, 877-499-4435. Finally, honest and ethical advice to gain real results. Call CDA Law Center at 877-499-4435. That's 877-499-4435, or check them out online at cdalawcenter.com.
Mortgage professionals, are you looking for a company that values you as a loan officer? One that can provide you with the tools you need to grow your business at your pace? Then look no further than CHL Mortgage. CHL Mortgage provides you with a full range of residential loan products and services. You'll be backed by an exceptionally trained team of professionals that can take your clients as seriously as you do. Your clients will be treated with dedicated service, personal integrity, and exceptional professionalism. You'll be able to guide them in the right loan with competitive rates and keep them on the road to achieving life's goals. To get started on advancing your career, call Dino with CHL Mortgage at 949-720-1616. That's CHL Mortgage, 949-720-1616.
Welcome back to Money Matters with Dino. If you have any questions for me or any of my guests here today, give us a call at 949-720-1616. That's 949-720-1616. From your estate to real estate, we're here to help you. You can also check us out online at moneymatterswithdino.com. This next segment has been brought to you by Citywide Home Loans, bringing you low rates, specials on closing costs, and exceptional service. Guys, if you're having a hard time getting your escrow closed, give us a call over here. We not only will close on time, but we will give you a great rate and good prices. So we're in the middle of our panel discussion with our experts, and if you're just tuning in, we're having an incredible discussion about real estate litigation nightmares and how to avoid them. Of course, if you missed any part of the show, you can go to moneymatterswithdino.com and check it out in its entirety. All right, guys, so we got a little bit off the beaten path and just kept talking, which is great because we didn't answer a lot of the questions, but we sure got a lot of good stuff out. So let's just see if we can get through some of these quickly. Jackie, how do you coach your sellers in regards to making requested repairs for the buyers?
Well, I'm a big believer in credit instead of doing repairs because they ask for repairs and then we get a handyman or a contractor out there and maybe they didn't do them to the buyer's likes. And so then we get to the walkthrough and then it's usually a big nightmare. So I actually tell my sellers, give a credit. And I usually word it in the addendum to in lieu of all repairs and covering the home inspection as well. And I find credits have kept me out of trouble all these years. So I'm a big credit person. And I think I don't know, Reed, would you say that's something that is a little better than maybe actually doing the repairs as a credit?
Yeah, absolutely. If you do the repairs, you can create liability because now it's on you to make sure those repairs are done correctly. And like Jackie, I think, said earlier, it's about suing everybody at some point. And so you want to avoid the possibility of being that everybody, whether it's Jackie or the people the buyers hired to do the construction or the repairs, whoever it is.
And even if they use the licensed contractor to do the repair, you're still going to be liable if something goes, or you could be if something goes wrong.
If they're not happy with the work.
Okay, well, it makes sense.
You asked a question, are they still going to be liable? There's a difference between whether you're liable and whether you're going to get sued. My dad used to say that it's not if you're going to get sued, it's when. So, and whether you're ultimately liable and have to pay damages, it's a totally different story. You want to avoid having to hire a lawyer and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars defending yourself, even in frivolous cases. And the way to avoid that is to think of every reason I can avoid any possibility of being the target of a lawsuit. And Jackie's making the great point. The way I avoid being the target, you do the repairs.
That's great
Give
advice.
Credit. And then if you went to court, then the judge would be like, well, you took this credit. You know, maybe that was your fault for not taking or agreeing to a higher credit or something.
That's great advice, guys. And I know somebody out there listening right now, you're going through this. You are in escrow. You're at the final stage and you're negotiating over some stupid little repair. And, you know, whether you're a buyer or seller, just think about this kind of stuff. And if you do have any questions, call us. I'll put you in touch with these people and they will help you answer these. Phone number is 949-720-1616. All right, guys, let's go on. What happens when there's an unpermitted construction on the property for sale?
Well, I could sell a complete house unpermitted as long as I disclose it. It can be a shack, no permits, with another shack next to it with no permits, with another shack next to it with no permits. And as long as I disclose that those 3 shacks are not permitted, I can sell that piece of property.
Basically just disclosures.
Disclosure.
That's exactly right. At some point, though, you do have to get somebody has to get a permit for this, right?
Only if there's lending involved.
Well, here's the deal with that. If the city, what I tell my clients is, you could not go a long time without a permit and you could be fine. But if your neighbor got mad at you and called the city and then that got brought up and the city came down, then the city's going to usually come site the property and either make you tear it down or bring it up to code.
Well, I'll give a perfect example. I actually had a client down in Laguna Beach who had it was a 5-unit place, 5 doors on it, but it wasn't permitted for that or zoned for that. And the city actually came down, made him put stairs inside of the building and basically even close up some of the doors. I mean, he had to convert it to a single-family residence, which cost a lot of money. When he bought it, back in the heyday when your dog could have qualified for something, you know, he just never even thought of this stuff.
Again, as a buyer's agent, I would make sure I put that in the disclosures representing the buyer, that the buyer knew that it wasn't zoned or whatever for a 5-unit.
So speaking of that, Jackie, as a real estate agent, typically, do you think other realtors spend enough time with their clients going over the contracts and disclosures? Do they even understand them?
Probably not. From what I see out there, actually.
All right. Here's something else. I'm sure both of you guys deal with landlords in your business. What advice would you give them before they get involved in rentals or dealing with tenants?
Dino, can I take a step back to something you just said?
Sure.
So you can't put the responsibility on your agent or your mother-in-law or wherever it may be. It is important to get a qualified agent. Obviously, Jackie is extremely qualified and will help you along the way. But it's even more important to read the contract and understand what the disclosures are and understand what the contingencies are and understand what your obligations are. And then ask intelligent questions to your agent, who then can intelligently say, we need to get this done, and this is when we need to get it done. You have to keep an eye on the ball, and you can't expect someone else is going to do it for you.
I always tell my clients there's no such thing as a dumb question. Feel free to ask me as many questions as you'd like. Write them down and I'll answer them one by one.
So, Reed, I agree with you. I mean, absolutely, if you're spending money, it's your responsibility. But I got to tell you, just being in the loan side of things, the amount of disclosures that we have, the amount of papers you have to sign when signing loan documents in front of a notary, there is no way in that you can actually read all of that stuff and understand it. And it's not like the bank gives it to you in plenty of time. I mean, you got somebody sitting there in front of you, and it's kind of one of those things like you're just forced into doing it. I mean, in my personal opinion, and I've said this a million times before, if the government really wants to help out, make it like 2 pages, maybe 3. The people will sit down and read it then.
That's a good point.
I mean, our loan docs are like 130 pages. Can you read all that stuff or even understand it?
And the longer they get, the smaller the font size.
Yeah.
Well, I disagree with Riedel in just the sense that I feel the agent does have some obligation to that it is important.
Well, you're paying them. Just like when you pay your attorney, you expect a little good advice. I don't
claim to be an attorney, but I do claim to know real estate and to guide my clients. So I kind of feel in a way that it is a little more of our responsibility.
All right, guys. So let's switch gears a little bit and go over to being a landlord. And, both of you guys deal with landlords in your business. What advice do you give them before they get involved with rental properties or even with tenants for that matter?
Well, probably read a lot about it, first of all, and talk to people who own rentals and then actually, again, getting contracts and then hiring a property manager maybe for the first couple of years.
I think that's great advice, actually. I've owned a lot of rental properties, and I got to tell you, it is not glamorous in any way. I mean, it's downright annoying at times. I finally bought a couple properties out of state, so I was forced to get a property manager. Best thing I ever did. Absolutely love it. I don't get bothered with anything. It's worth the money. If you're listening right now, I got to tell you, if you have any properties and you're not the professional, do yourself a favor, get yourself somebody that can manage it.
What I see the biggest fault of owners is being too nice. And I hate to say that, but they're like, oh, my tenants are so nice and they have a baby and this and that. And like, it's business. They got to pay their rent. They got to do what they say in the contract. And that's usually they're too nice to be a landlord. Sure.
Rita, I got a question for you. Let's say you're a landlord, your tenant's not paying, you need to evict them. What's the procedure?
Well, it's all statutory. And oftentimes what I would recommend is find yourself a good UD lawyer. Unlawful detainer is a very finite expertise, and there are people that do a good job and do it for a good price. But you need an expert because it's very procedural. You need to make sure you do every step exactly right. You give notice properly, all those things. You serve the person properly. So my advice is to find a qualified UD lawyer and have them shepherd you through the process. Is it
costly, or is it not too bad?
Well, I think, is it costly? It's kind of relative. Hiring a lawyer, no matter who it is going to be costly. Yeah, and, hiring an accountant, going to a doctor, it's all costs money. So it depends on how much money you have, whether you consider it costly or not.
And I guess in this case, just to make matters worse, your tenant's not paying your rent, and then you have to spend more money even to get them out. What if it was an out-of-state landlord? Does that change anything? Is it more difficult?
No, I don't think it changes anything. You still hire the in-state UD lawyer, and the person goes through with the process of getting the person out. And if you have a real problem with the tenant, another thing you have concerns about, other than just, and Jackie knows this probably more than I do, beyond just not paying rent, what are they doing to the property while they're sitting in there?
Right.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If your tenant is showing signs that they're not going to cooperate, then get some kind of professional help because it can be a nightmare, and then they begin California being a consumer friendly state, they can drag it on for a long time.
Dino, I had a commercial unlawful detainer case, and I didn't handle the UD part. I handled the civil damages action. And the way it goes is you first get the person or the company out of the property, and then after that you sue for damages, whatever the damages are. In this case, the client, who I didn't represent at the time when they did the unlawful detainer case, waited too long and went through kind of a elaborate process to get the tenant out. Well, during that process, they were destroying the property, pulling manufacturing pieces out, destroying the ground. And this was in this case, was a $500,000 foundation that was destroyed entirely.
Wow. That's crazy.
Did I say 500,000 or $500?
500,000.
500,000, yes.
1,000. Here's another landlord question. What kind of liability does a landlord have if somebody gets injured on their property, whether it's the tenant or a tenant's friend?
Insurance.
Yeah, you have complete liability.
Make sure you have the right insurance.
Yeah, liability in the case of personal injury on a landlord's property comes down to whether you were negligent and causation, whether the negligence caused the person's injury. But yeah, absolutely, get insurance like Jackie says, because you will be held liable for the injuries that occur on the property.
All right, eminent domain. It's something I think people have heard of, but a lot of people listening don't know what eminent domain is. Who wants to educate us a little bit on that?
Reed, I'm not that familiar with it. I mean, I know what it is, but I'm definitely not an expert on it at all.
All right, Mr. Attorney, let's go. You're up.
I'm not an expert on eminent domain either. It's kind of a unique situation. There are lawyers out there who specialize in this type of area, but it's pretty straightforward in the 30,000-foot view of it. The government has the right to come in and take property if there is a legitimate government public use. And then there's a kind of a long, drawn-out procedure to prove that, public procedure, and make sure it's all approved. And then they actually have to give you just compensation, the word, quote-unquote, just compensation. And I don't know if Jackie's been through that process or not. I actually haven't been through that process, but my understanding is it's a calculation based on the market and comps, and just like any other comparison situation.
Typically, my clients that have had to give up a property for eminent domain feel they have not gotten enough. So again, looking at the future, like I've actually showed houses and on a busy street, and then there's talk of possible future use for it. I tell them not to buy on it because, again, if it's going to be eminent domain, usually they don't get as much as they feel is fair.
Yeah, that the whole eminent domain thing to me, I mean, I get it. It's for the better good of everybody else, right? But sometimes it seems like people get screwed on it. I mean, I had a situation where the person got whatever they got, and it was when values were starting to go up a lot. So they missed out on a huge appreciation over the next several years. And unfortunately, they couldn't get into another property because they couldn't qualify anymore.
And with people's pockets and other people's pockets, you never know how eminent domain might be not used correctly, or maybe even for the initial use or whatever. I don't know.
You're listening to Money Matters with Dino. If you have any questions at all about what you've heard here today, or you want to speak with Jackie or Reed in person, give us a call. We're at 949-720-1616. That's 949-720-1616. That's why we're here, to make sure you're getting the most out of your real estate that you can. Protect your finances, protect your family, and be real estate wealthy.